a fair number of my poems come from dreams I have, and if I can't do that, I try to get dreams of from somebody else, and my son is a good source of that. I don't have one of his right now, but this is a poem from a dream that I had called "You Can't Imagine What You Can't Imagine." Then there was the day I caught you bilocating in the kitchen. You standing there in your fuzzy red nightgown. Another you crouching in pajamas, putting cinnamon rolls in the oven. When I spoke my amazement, neither of you seemed concerned. The you in the fuzzy red nightgown placed arms around my neck. The you in pajamas merely moved an interested eye in my direction, and you said with a smile, "I am not as horizon stuck as you." Back on a religious note, this is called "Thy Neighbor's Ass." It has an epigram. I can't read without my glasses. I can't read with them either. The epigram is, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's." Exodus 20:17. That manservant and maidservant thing has never been an issue. But everything else except my neighbor's wife is probably up for grabs. The thing is, only about a nanosecond exists between the very first mention of my neighbor's house, or ox, or ass, or whatever, and the thought that next clinches my mind so quickly and immediately with the pain that I don't have and might not ever have a house that grand or an ox so fine. How extremely short is the distance from thought to envy. Perhaps if I could somehow widen the gap in that synapse, it could one day stretch into a gulf. I could stand two-legged within, and then perhaps my neighbor might covet that.
Yeah.
This is a poem that I wrote after my son was in college, and my son had very long hair and a beard, and this poem is titled "Jesus on a Lawnmower." Home from school, home from your own ivory tower, some changes are obvious. Long hair flowing gracefully beyond your shoulders, and a beard like Jesus, from a familiar painting, perhaps the shepherd with the lamb, or the knocking at the door. Sometimes I don't see the resemblance as you return home from your own apostles, who know you and your spirit too, just to spend another summer with mom and dad, who see family values in chores and sacred ritual among the ordinary. But your younger brother is obsessed with capturing the incongruity with a camera, so he can sell photos of Jesus on a lawnmower. Next poem is called "The Gap." An angel told me my brain has compensated for the small but growing gap in my vision, replaced its garish city lights with new synapses, bypassing the harmful deposits left behind by the peep show collective. The spectral face whispered a path of light extending from a body of secrets, perhaps chants from a lost Canaanite tribe or Toltec teachings from a timeless elder, waking the dead vision centers of my brain. People are starting to disappear. Unearthly lights appear in unexpected places. War drums fall silent and call the tribes together. find a certain poem here. It happens too soon. Okay. Another story that is mostly true. This is called the New Girl at the Dairy Queen, and it's a poem I had published in Night Train a few years ago. It has an epigram from Dogen, who was a 13th century Buddhist writer and poet. The epigram says, "When riding on a boat, if one watches the shore, one may assume that the shore is moving. But watching the boat directly, one knows that it is the boat that moves." Dogen. New Girl at the Dairy Queen, the one who wasn't there last month, the one with the short cropped hair, with all that hardware on her ear and metal in her tongue. Not that any of this is important now, except that she wasn't the one I was expecting. For 3 minutes I watch her, there for the ragged family in front of me, the one with the snot-nosed boy held tightly in his father's arms, the one with the mother chasing a pink-sneakered girl, chanting something about sprinkles. The poor are with us in line always, I think. Yet it is not always so with you and me. I step into her boat. The eternal shore winks in and out, as always. For another 3 minutes she is present too, with me, even as her manager leaves for the 71st Street store to manage some new crisis. Rattles a litany of instructions to no one in particular. Lock up everything according to procedure and change the dishwater this time. The new girl replies, already changed, and the sanitizer started. And then quietly, to no one in particular, all is under control. Not boasting, just simplicity for the taking. Assurance, the way a monk in the forest sees grace notes at sunset. There is a calm in her eyes. Is this all it takes to be present for 3 minutes and then do it again? There is a calm in her eyes as she slides the sundaes into my hands, a small butterscotch into my left, and a small hot fudge for you into my right. Yeah. This one is Our Bitter Angels. If you're familiar with Branches magazine, this was published a few months ago in Branches. When we forget to call on our better angels, sometimes imposters step forward into the gap. Our bitter angels, those voices inside our heads, incessant, unforgiving, unrelenting. They know all our secrets, the ones we hold so close to our false shadows, dangerously far from our hearts. They use them against us like insider information at every turn, remind us how we shall burn should these truths tumble into full view. Our bitter angels without grace or mercy guide us down dark paths like black crows on fence posts, taunting ominously as we tread between the rows, scared of nothings, scared of shadows. This poem just was prompted out of the blue by something strange my daughter-in-law said. This is called Our Differences. If it is anything like Serbo-Croatian, she said, you don't change your alphabet in the middle of a sentence. That is what I thought too, until the man peddling ornate flashcards came to the door, a simple symbol salesman, with his circles and rectangles and squares, his loosening fingers dangling himself dangerously from a trapezoid above a beckoning black lagoon. Unlike you. But then you have always been of one mind about these matters, and not just a little odd. Thank you. She does not tolerate paradox well. She does not tolerate paradox well, nor him for that matter, nor her cat, who likes to lie across her shoulders while a chocolate Labrador sits at her feet in stark obedience. Ambiguity sits uneasy with her. She demands her facts black and white, unstirred with no nonsense. Loyal lapdogs work best, in her mind, low turnover. No need to retrain even her thoughts, nor plow new earth of any kind. She was done with all that a long time ago, when some festered hurt pestered her long after the initial pain had passed. Now she grows thistles, with the hope that some sweet William or Jack in the pulpit might unexpectedly poke through. That is why he stays to discover if he is the true wildflower she sees, and not the massive contradictions he knows himself to be. Thank you. It is only a movie, and you are in it. A strand of cosmic celluloid in which you are framed second by second. The other actors don't always notice you. They are so in character. Method actors all. They too are caught up in themselves. But you think yourself awake, yet you sleep and dream and move like all the others until someone whispers to you, it is only a movie, and you know it is true. Then for a time you can see how it happens, the stream of stills, just as they are, as it is. Peace settles in, and you are the calm in the storm, steeled against your own fears. You speak your lines without prior thought. It just happens, and you play your part. Somehow you aren't sure how this happens. You begin sleepwalking again. But now and then you will whisper to yourself, it is only a movie.
Yeah.
This is a little poem about insomnia called Night Soldiers. Peace in pieces, light fractured, every cell on guard, my towers rimmed along the ramparts with anxious night soldiers who scan the horizon for dawn clues, see shadows everywhere, hear war cannons hidden in the thunder. Nothing is as it is. To my sleepless projectors who will not stand down, they love me so well, yet serve me so poorly, like a loyal sled dog team mightily pulling their cargo toward an unseen cliff. It was not one thing that turned my sentries out as the night turned dark, only an accumulation, a droning drumbeat. Someone has to stand guard when the fool on the hill shuts his eyes. Oh, I mentioned earlier about I like to write poems based on dreams I have, or I mentioned that my son, who's now 30 years old and lives in Burbank, he has notorious dreams, and I'll even email them to me so I can do something with them. This is called In Your Dreams. In your dreams, animals speak to you, sometimes wisdom, sometimes gibberish. In my dreams, I read memos. I lie down for rest, but find none. In your dreams, your best friend shoots arrows at the moon, but the arrows fall short to land in moon-drenched corn. Or you find a blue dog with tags. He is lost, but still wears his directions home. Oh, and he has a pistol strapped upon his back. You tell the dictator he is a liar, and 100 nuns come forth chanting in solidarity with you. But you die too often for my taste. I would tire of that symbology, yet you find new ways to live on in your dreams. Thank you. This is called A Hard Nut to Crack. In the end, I was a hard nut to crack. The quiet force of such uninspired history piled dream debris inexorably into the ripples of my cautious wake. In the beginning, I was soft and pliable clay as you are now. Had I known what would harden and bake me, and what would ultimately break me, I would have shouted out an early warning to you. Waiting for the dammed up juices to flow, decades blink. In the middle of the night I have wrestled cryptic messages, tried to write the riddles in the morning, but instead kept up this insane trading down, swapping creativity for convenience. I must have more time on my hands in that other dimension, or all time, or none that can be measured through a time-bound drip. I used to think that in the end God would greet me and say, I never expected you to figure it all out. But all God said was, it didn't have to be perfect, and I cracked wide open. I'm looking for something specific. Sorry about that. This is another story poem, and it's one from when I was a very little child. I think everything's when I was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years old, somebody, well, I don't know what the relationship was with my family, moved in. I think in retrospect she was there to watch after me, but I didn't know that at the time. And she was diabetic and was in a wheelchair. And this is called What Tressie Taught. Our 3-story wood-shingled house sat 1 block east from the banks of the Mississinawa, named by the Miamis to describe its laughing waters. I was 2 when Tressie moved in. Joy moved in with her, and the river waters laughed again. Who she was, I do not know. A friend of a friend, perhaps, who became extended family. Diabetes racked her body, and she moved in without an arm and a leg, and sat, I supposed at the time, on a throne with wheels. She moved from room to room. She taught me words and songs and forgiveness and acceptance and why the world works as it does. Afternoon radio drama filled the air as I sat at her knee, or where it was, and soaked up knowledge from her heart, questions posed by a young mind, but which came from the heartbed of a soul as old as hers, learned that she did not require 2 arms to hold me, 2 feet to walk in the world, or more than 1 hand to point out the difference between the good of heaven and the way of the world. I never asked what took her limbs. At 3 or even 4, it only occurred to me that this is the way God made this woman, and sent her to me like laughing water. Tressie taught that arms are extra, as she hugged me with little more than a shoulder, and taught that the first snowflakes of winter were made of sweet sugar she could no longer eat, and that angels were stars in heaven. She moved out to move in, I suppose with other friends of friends, to my grandmother's town. Our family drove State Road 13 to visit her there. My brothers and I would lie scattered on the floor like kindling sticks before the altar of television glow, while Walter Cronkite's booming voice told us, "You are there." And I knew that I was here, as I always am and always have been. On a cold winter night, soon after, my mother stood before me with trepidation, unmasked on her face, and braced to tell her child his cherished Tressie had died, then held on, expecting to soften the crush that death always deals to the living. I looked to the west at a newly twinkling star, suspended high above Mississinawa's laughing waters, and knew truly that limbs that are not present and knew truly, like limbs that are not present, that nothing real was gone, and nothing true had been lost. I will end up with just a couple here. This is when I am big as the sky. When I am big as the sky, I am magnanimous. When I am little, like a mountain cascade, I tumble downward over pebbles, pounding them into themselves. When I am a loud wind, I bring down the fragile. When I am fire, I flare and burn through my forests. When I am you, I am not myself, any more than I am not you. When I am full, I lay back and repose with you and sip rich wine from deep goblets. When I lay empty, I fill myself with stars until I am as big as the sky. And I will end with a poem called This Is How It Ends. As it is in the beginning, world upon world, maybe that is why I am here in the first place. Only because I am complex do I string things out in a line. What if it were all simpler than I can imagine? What if all my selves were together all at once? What if in the end there was no middle ground? Could it be a little round tale I told myself? A man walked into his life and knew no fear, walked backwards, whistling into the dark until all he knew was fear. A man loved a woman because she reminded him of someone long ago who spun galaxies from the crown of her head. And she said he reminded her of someone she was yet to meet, who would whisper secrets in her ear. A man walked into a bar, and all his friends were there, drinking and telling stories as if life were all at once, when a foreigner came in and said, "This is how it ends."